happy to present another exciting discussion and a very important subject to the very, very important stakeholders who are the main constituents of our Indian economy, the MSMEs and the startups. So just to give you a brief, I'm Sarika Guliani. I head the local initiative chapter for the Universal Acceptance for India, which is a chapter being run by us, of course, with the support of the Universal Acceptance Steering Group, which is under the aegis of the ICANN. And we have various representatives, various veterans, leaders across the industry, global as well as from India, who have been playing an important role on a very, very important subject of the universal acceptance. So what is universal acceptance? Why it is important? It's something which FICCI, ILIA and the local initiative has already been talking about it. We have had a multiple round of discussions with the different entities, stakeholders, be it the industry, entrepreneurs, startups, or the academia. Today, we thought that we have to move a step ahead, and we would like to tell the people who are the budding entrepreneurs, who are studying, or who are in the category of the startups and the MSMEs, that what is universal acceptance, how it is going to be important, and how they can adopt it. So that's I would say the objective with this session is being organized. We have set of people who are there who will, of course, take you through the whole journey of the session. We would, of course, my colleagues are there. If you have any questions, you can post up in the chat and we can then take up with the respective speakers during the session. Also, just to let you know that since we run the local initiative chapter, so the purpose of the chapter is, of course, the knowledge dissemination, which we do it, empowering you through various tools and technologies with the help of the experts which we have, so that you join us in the journey of the universal acceptance. And why it is important is subject, that is something, and how it's going to benefit you. It's a topic which we are going to discuss today, which will make you understand that how universal acceptance is a key to unlocking growth opportunities for the startups in the MSME sector. I'll just say that since we are talking right now, this time focusing highly on the startups and the MSMEs, and as I said, that they are very important constituents of our economic growth. We understand the government of India have announced various programs for the startups, be it the Startup India and the others. And we have more than 84,000 startups which are there, which are contributing almost 7.3 billion USD, which is a turnover rate with the revenue, which we have got the figures for the year 2021 to 22. So we can understand the role they are playing in, whether we talk about the innovation, whether we talk about the reaching to the special niches, or you talk about the entrepreneurship, or providing the local employment. Everything is something which these people do take care of. When you're talking about the startups, MSMEs, while you create your own products, while you come up with the new ideas, which is very, very important, is that with the population of 1.4 billion, you reach to the masses so that your product is available, your services are available to those people. So how do you do that? How the universal acceptance is going to enable you in the process of increasing your reach, making you to reach to the people whom you have yet not thought about it, or expand your business, how it's going to be a business opportunity, and what you need to do. That is something which we are going to talk about it. I'll just say that universal acceptance is something which makes you actually, I would say, feel or get digitally empowered with a digitally inclusive internet. So something which is actually very, very important for a country like us. We have lots of diversity where you have 22 official languages. So it's very important that this concept is being understood, which is not very, very difficult. It's very easy. It's only that you have to take a step forward, and that the local initiative chapter with the support of ICANN would be more than happy to help you out. So, and as part of FICCI Indian Language Internet Alliance, we do work on the various other areas as well, which includes a part of the multilingual internet. So we would be happy to support you in all ways. With these words, I would now stop here, and I would request the chairman for a FICCI National Task Force on the Universal Acceptance and the Multilingual Internet, Dr. Ajay Data, who has actually worn multiple hats apart from his the CEO for his own company. He's been the first global UASG chair. So he's the one who has guided us and led us through the various journeys. And we have been taking up this initiative under his guidance since past 3 years, and we are more than happy to take it forward now, continuing. So Dr. Data, over to you for your welcome address, and how do you see the importance of the universal acceptance subject for the very important category and something which is very important for our country, the startups and the MSMEs. Over to you, Dr. Data.
Thank you, Sarika ji. Thank you everyone for joining this session. A very important stakeholder. There are two stakeholders here, MSME and startups. MSMEs are an integral part of our Indian economy. What we call them is micro, small, and medium enterprises. That is under the MSME Development Act 2006. And that's where the companies are almost 64 million MSMEs are here in India, which is almost 6 crore, if it, I may say, employing almost 110 million people. So we are addressing a large part of our stakeholder group. Second is our startup ecosystem. As per the government of India, our startups are almost 90,000 startups in the country, and they give an employment to almost 1 million people. So let us say, to calculate 1:10 ratio is almost there. That used to be quite low in the years before, which used to be 2 to 3 people. But recently, government reported in the parliament that we are almost 1 million numbers and 90,000 recognized startups. So we are two stakeholders. One is 6 crore MSMEs, and we are talking about the 90,000 startups. And why we should address them for is universal acceptance. And that's the reason we should little bit ponder upon why it is important to have these two stakeholders understand the future of internet, understand the future of business, which is changing very, very fast. We have almost 40 crore people. We all know that we are the largest population country, and we have almost 88% people who do not consume and speak content in English. Internet is a superpower. Internet is a very powerful tool, and which changes the life for almost everyone. So let us take one parameter. One parameter is, in 2016, we did not have digital payments. Fast forward 2023. In February, we had almost 300 crore payment transactions. And that's a huge change. Imagine that, which was zero in 2016, we have 300 crore transactions in February 2023, which means that the cash transactions are reducing and digital payments are increasing. Imagine the similar scenario way forward when the internet gets consumed, when the internet progresses in the future, that people do not consume content which you are currently creating in English. People do not use that application which do not have the language of your choice. People do not consume or not able to subscribe to the service which you have created, which do not accept an email ID in the language of his choice. That's changing. That's where we are going to talk about, and the panel speakers are going to talk about, that how the dimensions are changing, what is coming new, and are we ready for it or not. So if you are a startup or MSME, imagine a scenario where you have an application which 88% of the country is not able to subscribe. Do you want that application? Would you like to create that application? And that's where the problem lies, because you are missing the majority part of the country as your customer. You're not able to reach. So startups have a large opportunity, and MSMEs have a large opportunity to address an untapped potential in the market. That is what universal acceptance brings to you. Untapped potential, where people would like to consume the application in the language of his choice, which is going to be more trustworthy for him, which is going to be more useful for him, and he do not depend on anybody for his uncle, chacha, beta to access that application. And that's where I met we do oil business also. I just met a distributor today before this call, and he was literally telling me that, Ajay ji, I could not book my airline ticket myself. because I don't know English as good. Imagine a situation that he is dependent even on getting an airline ticket on his son, which he's not very happy with. So can we offer him a solution? If there is a website which offers him an airline ticket, complete journey in Hindi, he is very comfortable to do so. Imagine this kind of customers are missing out of the main services. And that's where we need to really focus on. So obviously universal acceptance, you all know, is accepting all domain names, all email addresses and all software applications. And that's where we need to really focus on that we bring in the applications and the email addresses in our choice, and people are able to consume those applications, consume those email addresses and domain names in your applications. So if you are a startup and you have an app, and if it asks for subscription, and if I cannot enter my email ID, which is in Hindi, that is ajay@data.bharat, then you are missing me as a customer. And the similar scenario is for MSME. That's a huge loss. And we are not able to tap that potential the way it is required. So with this meeting, which is probably a first of its kind and starting point to address 64 million MSMEs and almost a lakh startups to be addressed countrywide. Through them, we are going to address 1 million employees who are building in startups to build technology solutions. This is a very important step to create an awareness about universal acceptance. And while creating an awareness, creating an opportunity for MSME and startups to tap the untapped potential in the country, which is going to make them business, make them grow, and be more profitable in the future to come. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. And I hope that this deliberation is going to create new wave in the country, in the startups and MSME. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Data, for your starting and a welcome remarks. Of course, putting the stress on how it's going to be very important for a common man with an own example, which you just mentioned about a person whom you just met a few minutes back before starting this webinar. And of course, how this subject is going to be really changing the MSME and the startups and build up a chain system. Like it's not only for them, it's going to be the employees, and further it goes on to one person to another. So it's kind of a whole, I would say, a handlock kind of a situation which will happen so that the whole journey of universal acceptance can be realized in India. So thank you for your initial remarks, and we would request you if you can stay. If there's some questions from the members from the audience, we can then maybe come back to you after another round of the discussion with another speaker. For the benefit of the audience, we will just like to say, like we mentioned, that while you will hear the speakers and everybody talking about it, but if you feel there's something which is not yet covered out here, or there's something which you want us to take it more through you, we will be happy to, we means the local initiative would be more than happy to actually guide you with the whole process. The various stakeholders, be it the METI, NIXI, everybody is, we are working as partners with them. So we would be more than happy to connect you to them as well in case of any thing which you feel which needs to be taken forward with the Government of India and others. So with this, now I will request our next important speaker. He is Mr. Nitin Wali from ICANN. He's the director for the stakeholder engagement. Nitin looks into India and the Southeast Asia. Thank you, Nitinji, for joining us today. We would just want to know that, first of all, thanks to ICANN for putting such a high importance to a country like India. We were more than happy. We understand that with the kind of diversity which we get in and the kind of strength we have with our various diversity, with the population, and with kind of activities and the support which the government is providing to the industry. And of course, now with the announcement of the, I would say, the policy, the multilingual internet policy phase 1, all those things build up a very important scenario for a country like India. And we are happy that ICANN has been very supportive for the process with our country. We would like to know your thoughts. So how do you see the MSME and the startups playing an important role in the whole journey of the universal acceptance? And if you have any specific expectations with respect to these entities from our country. Over to you, Nitinji.
Thank you so much, Sarika ji. And thank you, Dr. Data, for putting everything so eloquently and in such easy to understand terms for all of us. So good afternoon, and welcome all of you again to today's session on universal acceptance. key to unlocking growth opportunities for startups and MSMEs. We did talk about ICANN. Sarkaji also mentioned, Dr. Data also mentioned about ICANN, but I'm not sure how many of us on the webinar today would actually know what ICANN is. At least I didn't know about ICANN, well, a couple of decades ago, but then I came to know about ICANN. So I'm not sure how many of you know. So let me just start by sharing a little bit about ICANN. So ICANN, or ICANN, is the organization that I represent and I work for. It stands for the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, and is essentially a multi-stakeholder group, a non-profit organization which is responsible for coordinating and managing the unique identifiers of the internet, ensuring stability and secure operations. And much of ICANN's work, if you really look at it, relates to the internet's domain name system, or the DNS as we call it, and policy around it, policy development for internationalization of the DNS. That's also under our brief. I know there's a little bit of tech there, but let me just give you a brief analogy to understand the DNS working a little bit better. So when any of us, browse a web page or chat with friends online, our phone or computer sending and receiving thousands of pieces of information. A piece of information sent over the internet is like a digital postcard, if you really ask me. It has a sender's address, it has a receiver's address, and obviously it has content in it. And your phone or device has a unique address called the Internet Protocol, or the IP address. And your device's IP address, is the sender's address. And this IP address essentially is a series of numbers and letters, right? So, for example, ICANN's website is icann.org. It's very easy to remember, but the IP address is something like a 192.0.43.7, and that would be humanly, impossible to kind of remember. Now, this domain name system actually connects the IP address to your device, and we look up the domain name and find its associated IP address. And by association and by this lookup, this gives you access to the internet. Without this DNS, we really wouldn't have had a global interoperable internet, if you really ask me. So ICANN does play a very critical role in the operation of the internet, and has been working jointly with several technical partners and the community overall to help evolve the internet to make it more accessible for everyone. And one of the steps towards accessibility is the enablement of IDNs, or internationalized domain names, and universal acceptance. Dr. Data very eloquently talked about universal acceptance and what it really means. And of course, IDNs, just for everybody, essentially are domain names in your local language, which again, Dr. Data did talk about, right? So for example, in India, I'm not sure how many of you really know, but you actually can get an IDN in all 22 scheduled languages of the country, right? And I just wanted to kind of just add to what Dr. Data said. Obviously, he put everything in perspective, but just in terms from an ICANN perspective, just wanted to add that, we're really committed to the idea of universal acceptance and the multilingual internet. And we look forward to your support in helping to make this, adoption mainstream. Now, coming back to the MSMEs pound, where we really talked about, and who are one of our stakeholders in the webinar today. I mean, we all know the data points around them, right? And how critical they are for a country's economic development. And not only India, globally, right? Globally, SMEs or MSMEs essentially are the ones who drive the economy, right? In our case, of course, small and medium businesses contribute about 36% of India's total manufacturing output, which is basically 1/3 of the country's output. And this sector obviously is expected to be a driver for India to becoming a high GDP economy and a nation. And as mentioned earlier as well, obviously, we already have 100 million jobs, but we're also looking at creating millions of new jobs for the 1.4 billion people that we are now, right? And while COVID did usher in a spate of digital readiness in the MSME sector, there is still a need for further penetration of technology, to make sure that MSMEs, our country's backbone, are globally competitive. And as more and more, players kind of enter this arena, right? It is certainly getting extremely competitive, right? And according to some estimates, the rate of successful digitization is about 20% in the Indian SME sector. And one of the many factors preventing SMEs from large-scale technology adoption could be the considerable cost of buying software or infrastructure. Though cloud services have flattened that cost curve, it still is an OpEx that has to be managed, right? When an MSME thinks of a digital journey, few things like maybe websites, social media platforms, SEO, payment gateway costs, all of those really come to mind. And maybe not in a specific order, but you kind of think, what could be my journey when I want to go digital, right? But how many of us actually get closer, know how to get closer to customer just by having a local language content or a local language domain website, right? In fact, I would even go a step further. Before this webinar today, how many of us really knew that you could actually get a local language website, a local language domain, and even a local language email ID, right? So if you're a business, say in Maharashtra, you could have a Marathi domain name. If you're a business in Tamil Nadu, you could have a Tamil domain name and a website address, and of course, email IDs across with that, right? So what that really does for all of us as small businesses or medium businesses or micro businesses is essentially it gets us so much closer to our audiences, right? And that's where we talk about the growth of the business itself, right? And why should you really care about all of this, right? When we're talking about IDNs, if you're talking about universal acceptance, for the simple reason, again, I think Dr. Data did touch upon it, but simple reason is that English is really not the native language spoken in India, right? In fact, for the majority of the world, actually, it isn't, right? And even if I have regional language content on my website, a user still has to type in an English domain name address in the search engine to get to the content that is not really a possibility for majority of our population. And an IDN really solves for this problem and more. And I think, again, Dr. Data did talk about his own example just maybe half an hour or 1 hour ago when he spoke to his distributor. He knew that it's available online, but he actually could not go in there and do it himself. He was dependent on somebody else. But had that been in, say in a Devanagari script in Hindi, or I'm not sure where the distributor was, but from anywhere in the country, had it been in a local language script and a local language domain, he could probably have just gone there and booked his ticket on his own. So coming back to the more part beyond what the IDN solves for, right? The more here is for solving things that the MSMEs and I think all businesses essentially need at the end of the day, right? And they spend lots of money and lots of marketing budgets on that. Things like generating quality leads, getting better conversions from the leads, and ultimately getting more revenue for the company, right? I mean, that's why you're doing the business, right? To turn your website traffic into converting customers, you must have a website that is accessible and relatable to your audience. And that goes back to my previous point that a local language website and a domain is how to solve for this. Even when you go on things like on SEO, if you obviously have a website, you want to promote it, you have a business, you want to promote that, you could actually have keywords in local languages, optimizing your pages for relevant search terms, right? So there also you get a push. And today with multiple businesses online, getting yourself heard and discovered is, even more crucial, right? And IDNs can help you engage the customer, combat a very, very noisy e-commerce space and build a loyal customer base. With the internet, I also feel there is really no boundary, right? And there shouldn't be boundaries to what you or your business can really achieve. There's nothing that's really stopping you from targeting maybe a French or a Russian or a German customer as well, right? Yes, you may need an IDN in their local language for that market and local content to build trust, but it is still possible. So whenever I meet small businesses or micro businesses, I just tell them, instead of looking local, maybe just look at being glocal, which is GLOCAL, which means best of both the world, right? Being global and local. And like I said, the best part of the internet is that it is boundaryless. So sitting at your place, sitting at your office, you could actually target consumers world over, right? And IDNs and universal acceptance are also an opportunity for startups in the tech space, right? Realizing this huge opportunity of being closer to customers through IDNs, organizations are looking at being UA ready, but may not necessarily have the resource bandwidth to implement it. So if some of you are in that space, I would strongly recommend that you look at UA as an opportunity, which is really waiting for you. I, for one, very strongly believe that UA readiness and implementation of the same will be India's next Y2K growth area. Just the way in the Y2K or 2000s, companies like TCS and Infosys and Cognizance of the world actually got that huge fill up and became multi-billion-dollar enterprises. I think this will be the next big opportunity for us as India. And also with the government committed to UA and local language scripts, this opportunity will only grow multifold in the coming years. I mean, imagine the power of over 1 billion non-English speaking consumers coming online and enterprises, large, medium, small, micro, all waiting to get them on board as customers, right? So in the end, all I would say that, it's time for UA. The time for UA has come. And I look forward to the support of all of you in making this happen and taking this forward. Thank you for your time. I would be happy to take questions towards the end of the session. But if you'd like to reach out to me, you can get my email ID from the FICCI team. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Over to you, Sarika.
Thank you, Nitinji. Thank you for, of course, talking about what ICANN is, how they're supporting it, how India is, of course, having the IDNs available in 22 languages, how it is being already done. In fact, for the benefit of the audience, it's the National Internet Exchange of India, the NIXI, who is providing that. As I mentioned, we work with them as partners, so we are more than happy. If you want any of those help, we can help you out in that process. So, Nitinji, thank you for throwing light on the India perspective from the ICANN side, and how universal acceptance is going to be a part of it, and how it is very, very important for us. So and I would request you to stay back. We'll of course come back on the questions once we have the other speakers who have made their own addresses. Then of course we'll take up the questions with the respective speakers as being raised in the chat. I've already got a few questions which is coming up in the chat, but I'm restricting all the questions to the end of the session. So I'll come back to all of you with the questions a little later. So from ICANN, now we move on to somebody who is, of course, from a private sector, but here, of course, he is representing as a co-chair of a Universal Acceptance Steering Group from ICANN. Like I mentioned, the local initiative chapters all across the world are run under the aegis of UASG, which is Universal Acceptance Steering Group under ICANN. And we have the chair and the co-chairs for that group. The global chair earlier was Dr. Data. He was the first global chair, followed by Mr. Anil Jainji, who is now taken up the role. And we are very happy and proud to say that it's India who's having his person being nominated as a global chair, which all the more actually makes us feel encouraged as well as motivates us that this subject and the whole area of discussion on the universal acceptance is very, very important when you talk about India with respect to the whole world. So Anilji, and then we have the co-chairs, Mr. Nitin Walia. So Nitinji, thank you for joining us this time, and congratulations for taking up the role of a co-chair of a USG ICANN. And from your perspective, we've just heard Nitin Waliji talking about what ICANN is and why India is important, how universal acceptance is going to play an important role, and what they're looking from your perspective as a co-chair for the USG, and also from a member from the industry who has been into the field, implementing it, interacting with various startups and the MSMEs. How do you see that, how this transformation of the business landscape with the universal acceptance and the multilingual internet can happen for the entities, MSMEs, and the startups? So over to you, Mr. Nitin Walia.
Thank you, Sarika ji, and very good afternoon and good evening to everyone. So this is Nitin Walia. I'm the co-chair for UASD and EI working group. And I'm also one of the director for Data Action Technologies, a company which brings almost 70 million users online in terms of EI and ID and emails and enterprise email platform. So just to start with that, we have been discussing about the importance of UA. So since the time permits me, I'm going to share with you a few slides which is going to talk about a bit about what UA is, so that instead of just listening, you all can also understand what we are actually talking about and why UA is so important for you all. So I'm just sharing with you my screen. Perfect. So I hope the screen is visible to you all.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So just to set the context, what we are going to talk about in the next 15 minutes, we have been listening that, language is very important. And yes, it is. Because majority of the world, the English is one of the language, but it is not the only language. It's one of the medium through which we all communicate in a common language, actually. Otherwise, when we talk about globally, it is a regional languages which clearly dominates the geographies, and based on that, the things, the importance of language comes into the picture. This presentation is going to talk about, more about what UA is, why it matters to you, and how we can collectively promote UA. So as I mentioned, if you clearly see, globally, English vis-a-vis the other languages, Mandarin, 1300 k million users, Spanish, English is just 373 million. Vis-a-vis our own Devanagari script, which is Hindi, is having more than 344 million users. So this shows this slide basically talks about that how important a language role is in terms of communication, in terms of the medium, and in terms of the importance which is going to play. So when it comes to language, then it comes to ideas actually. Generally, we globally, if you will see, the ideas are available now in all various kind of languages. So like, my earlier speakers and Sarika ji mentioned, here in India, we have .in registry, who is the Internet Exchange of India. And they're offering, the domain names in all 22 official languages, which means that, over the internet, it is just not English anymore. You can have a domain name in language of your choice, based on the geography, based on the consumers you want to target. I always quote one important example actually, that, for any MSME or any startup, when we go, for advertising our product, specifically into, newspapers or into TV advertisements, we don't prefer to have English. We prefer to give the majority of the advertisements into the local language we talk about, where we want to address the community. And that's the reason in our country, we have more regional and Hindi channels vis-a-vis English. And same is the scenario for the local newspapers. The circulations which they have vis-a-vis the English newspapers. And accordingly, they charge the price. You will find, the local newspaper more expensive than giving an advertisement into an English newspaper, because they have a large circulation, which clearly means that the industry which we want to cater, or a customer which we want to cater, is lying into a language dominating area. So globally, you have various ideas and in all kind of scripts. So as of now, we have 62 odd CCTLDs who have been offering this globally. And even in the GTLDs, we have 91 GTLDs who are being delegated with these ideal domain names and offering these domain names to you all. So these are the few examples of an ID and what ideal domain look like. So if you see, here in India, when we talk about Hindi as a Devanagari, so domain name displayed as datamail.bharat. So this is a kind of a domain name which anyone can have. So you can have a domain name of your own business, with the .bharat extension. Same way, in Korea, if you're serving to the Korean community, you can have a Korean domain name, or, Arabic community, you can have Arabic domain name. So these are the few examples, of the internationalized emails addresses, because we all know that when we book a domain name, there are two important things. One, a website into that local language, and second, an email address over that. So even you don't need to have a ASCII email address, wherein the community you are targeting, if you provide them an email address into English, like when the session started, Dr. Data mentioned that he met to one of the distributor, and because of the language constraint, he was not able to visit the website. It's the same example, that because the website is not available on IDN domain names, and even the contact us email address is not even EAI. So if you have your website email address as a website domain name as an IDN, followed with an EI email address, the maximum problem is resolved. And actually, UA talks about, that all domain names in all scripts should work on all websites and email addresses. So that's what I mentioned, that, the goal and the impact of UA is that all valid domain names and email addresses work in all software and applications. And the impact is to promote consumer choice, improve competition, and provide broader access to the end users. Now, why UA matters? This is the important thing for you all, because coming from the MSME and the startups, this is actually the very important issue. Like my fellow speaker, Mr. Wali from ICANN, Nitin Wali, he mentioned about the Y2K thing. Same is the situation right now. It's not a problem. It's a bug in various applications, which just need to be resolved. And once you start accepting these domain names and email addresses, your bug is resolved. So you can help in multiple ways. It can bridge the digital divide. It can support a diversified and a multilingual internet. It can enable greater competition, innovation, and consumer choice. So you can understand, in India, when we talk about it's hardly 11% of the population who can read, write in English. So 89% of the population who cannot read, write in English are deprived to use the facilities of internet, which means that this is the number of consumers which are available, which are untapped, with zero competition. And these will go to whom? The person who is able to serve them into their own language. So it can create business opportunities. It can offer career advantages, even for the developers and system administrators. The developers as a system admins who are not having great command in English, but yes, they can do a very wonderful coding and development into their own native languages. So they have a bigger opportunity. And even the government and the policymakers. So supporting a multilingual internet is very important in today's scenario, because it will not only increase the economic benefits, it will also have a social benefits in supporting the internet users globally. In UA, we generally talk about the 5 verbs, which is accept, validate, process, store, and display. So we always say that support all valid domain names and email addresses. Accept means you should accept the email address or the domain name into the local script. Your software should validate those characters and recognize them as valid, not as junk characters. Your application should process these domain names and email addresses. And then your database should store them. And then finally, your UI should display them. So working towards a UA readiness, we have been doing a lot of initiatives as an UASG, which is Universal Acceptance Steering Group, founded by ICANN. The objective was to bridge this gap and to promote UA, so that the problem of these IDN domain names and email addresses can be resolved for the community. So to know more about USD, you can visit the usd.tech website, and you can also contribute and join. So I straight away come to your role, basically as an MSME and a startup. Basically, UASD is bringing almost $1 billion opportunity on your table. So if your businesses are UA ready, your applications are UA ready, then you can address this $1 billion opportunity. So what you need to do? So you need to just simply update your systems, your applications, your mobile applications, your websites, that they should support UA. They are UA ready. Not only that, you should also collaborate, participate, and promote UA related discussions within your own employees and within your own community also, and create the UA awareness. Because eventually, the more and more people become UA ready, more and more applications become UA ready, the more and more business opportunities will going to come to you. Just to give you a glimpse, India, specifically the government, is very keen and focused on that, because even ICANN, the global body, have UA is a very important thing for them. We recently have a UA Day event in India, wherein the board members from the UA ICANN was available, and they have shown their keen interest and commitment towards universal acceptance. Even the government of India has created a steering group, a committee which has formed a report, and now government is implementing this phase 1 readiness for universal acceptance and multilingual internet. So soon you will find major government websites on these ID and domain names. The work has already started. And also the email addresses are being used into all official 22 languages. So when I talk about the email, we already have a lot of success stories in India. We have a success story of government of Rajasthan, wherein they have provided one free email account to all citizens. Not just that, they are also providing email addresses to all the startups here in Rajasthan and all the government officials. So since the project has launched, they planned for almost 20 million citizens, and they have already touched base more than 7 million as of now. Email is available both in English and Hindi. So in Hindi, you can have an email address on your name @rajasthan.bharat. Same way, the National Internet Exchange of India, NIXI, is providing one free email address with all domain names which are being booked in IDN in all 22 languages. Even government of Karnataka has adopted this, and they have provided email addresses into Kannada language also. So to get involved with UA, we have various programs. You can visit the usd.tech website. You can connect to our wiki page. You can subscribe to UA Discuss list, and you can also join various working groups through which you can grab a lot of information and knowledge about UA. That's it. Thank you. And what I'll request you all is you should be vocal for local, which is important for every startups actually. And I would also like to share you specifically for the MSMEs that National Internet Exchange of India, NIXI, has come up with a very special offer for all MSMEs. So any MSME who is not having a domain name even till now can approach NIXI, and they will be going to provide you an domain name with one free email address for a year free of cost. And later on, they also have a very subsidized policy for the MSMEs. So this is a new initiative by .in registry to promote more and more inclusive internet within the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitinji, for talking about the USG.tech, of course, mentioning about the how most of the internet right now currently is operating in English. We have the content available in English, and how do we need to increase the, when you talk about the languages, like you talk about Mandarin, you talk about Spanish, Arabic, and then of course with Hindi we come in fifth in number. So we have to really see that how do we increase while the speakers are there, but we don't have so much of a content content available in the language. So how that needs to increase, and how the universal acceptance is further going to complete this journey of the multilingual internet, and how the ICANN through USG.tech and the various resources being available can actually benefit from how the members can benefit from them. And like you mentioned, and like I have also mentioned, Nixie is giving the domain names, and we have in fact 22 domain names only for a country like India, which is already in there. The IDNs are there, so you can write to them. If you have any queries, you can write to us. We'll be happy to connect you. In fact, as part of the government's initiative of the system, the multilingual internet, which Nitin Walia just mentioned, and I mentioned in my starting, that the government has come out with a policy. The first phase focuses on the universal acceptance, and FICCI is happy to partner with the government, and we are running a support and the implementation center. So that is being, of course, the support in the support in terms of the knowledge and the hand-holding is done by the experts, many of them who are already part of the discussion today and many who are not, but it's a group of people who actually helps you out. So we are more than happy. You can write to us. We can more than happy, as part of the support center, take your queries to the Nixie or to write experts whom you want the hand-holding to be done in the process of the universal acceptance. So thank you, Nitinji, for your perspective. And now we come into another speaker, Mr. Akshat Joshi. He's the founder for Think Trans. Akshat, we have been interacting you at various levels, various, I would say, various webinars in the various capacities. Here, I would like to say that when you started Think Trans, right? So of course, you have an experience of working with the government agency, and you know how things work in. And then, of course, the universal acceptance came in, and then your own organization came in, how you took up the thing for the universal acceptance. And now when you have implemented it, of course, you were also part of our core group in terms of the experts whom we are working with. But we also want to understand that when you took up the journey for your own self, how easy or difficult was it for you, both in terms of the resources and the time and the efforts? I would talk about it. And then how do you see the peers who are talking about, because when you're talking about MSME in the startups, I mean, I'm sure Think Trans is also part of the same community. So how do you see how you can encourage your peers to take it up by giving your own live example? So I would now ask you to give your address on the UN, the multilingual internet, how it's going to be a game changer for the startups, how it has helped your own company in the business expansion. So over to you, Akshat.
Sure. Thank you, Sarika ji, and thank you to all my previous panelists to set the context so beautifully. I really can directly now dive deep into the subject, and addressing your question specifically, Sarika ji. I think the Think Trans initiative that we started in 2020, which was right at the outset of COVID. COVID was just about to begin. And before that, I was with CDAC for 12 years, and I have been seeing this policy development process for internationalized domain names in Indian languages right from the driver's seat. And it's been a massive effort. Let me tell you, the Indian language IDNs, the idea and the overall discussion started around 2007. And I got associated with it since 2008. And there were discussions about, like, okay, internationalized domain names, India is going to get CCTLDs. How are we going to go about it? IDNs have always been known to have some issues. Can we just preclude those issues before we launch them to the general public, so that people's overall expectations and experience with the internationalized based domain names is seamless? There are no hiccups and stuff like that. So there was a lot of caution floating in the air, and we treaded our path very slowly and cautiously. And I think it was around 2014 that we were in a position to say that we already have our policy of our own. Even before ICANN, for that matter, we had a NICSI policy, Government of India policy, well supported by MIT, to launch Indian language IDN domain names. And that was one of the first kinds of efforts that had happened. Now, why I'm going so much detail about this particular effort is because it was always known that Indian languages are complex languages, not as simple as Latin, for example. We have so many number of characters, so many kinds of characters. Not every character can sit on each other, or there are display problems, support issues and all. And that was the reason we were so cautious. And let me tell you, I would definitely stake my some reputation to this. But our policies, when it comes to IDNs for Indian languages, are one of the most restrictive and secure policies of domain names anywhere. Because since we knew that there are possibilities, so just one small example, when it was decided that when a particular domain name is given, a typical policy is what the similar looking potential domain names, what should be happening about it? Should they be co-delegated? Should they be blocked and all? One of the approaches that we have taken is similar looking domain names would be blocked. And that is one of the most restrictive, even by the ICANN definition of policies. And that's why in terms of consumer trust, since we are talking about MSMEs and startups, and this being discussed in the context of the UASG umbrella, the very term meaning that there are some issues related to universal acceptance. But then I would like to assure the community about this, that if you go for a domain name, be sure that most of the problems that can otherwise come naturally and you would have to just bite the bullet, many of those have already been taken away. Obviously, internet being a space for innovation and everything, obviously there will be some, but let me tell you, the basic ones will definitely be not part of the IDN functionality and access experience for the user. So in terms of businesses, I would like to stress upon this fact that they should definitely go for IDNs and trust the policy that lies behind and build businesses upon it. So that is one thing. In terms of my experience about starting with in this space, in ThinkTrans, we have always believed that languages and working for languages should not be only for the sake of working for languages. You should be bringing the languages are enablers, right? And there should be a human element. Overall, the number of people who come onto any service, for example, when localization takes place, there is a huge load of people who can come onto those particular services. And that was one of the things that we started ThinkTrans with. And we started working on two different modes. One of those was to work with tier 2, tier 3 cities and local entrepreneurship ecosystem, and to bring them onto the internet bandwagon. The other one, obviously, being we were closely associated with this process. So being into the consultancy, for example, being part of FICCI ILI initiative, working with NICSI and working with MIT. Then there are many other private organizations to which we can provide consultancy. Everybody is talking Indian languages, let me assure you. And typically, since we are talking to potential startup founders or existing startup founders, MSME industry players and all, typically when we try to gauge the waters, like for the future of the businesses, I would always go by I always go by this, that don't always pay attention to what is being said to be the next future technology, but where the indicators lie. Always pay attention to the indicators. And so the very thing that we are discussing, internationalized domain names having potential, and ICANN is behind this. Government of India is saying that this needs to be promoted. NICSI is very much involved. FICCI kind of in the large industry body is talking about it. One should be assured that there is a huge potential for internationalized domain names in at least in 2-3 years down the line. Now, why I say that? Because if you just pay attention to existing internet statistics, like Nitinji also showed, that in Hindi, for example, doesn't figure out, even though is has one of the largest user bases, it doesn't figure out in the top languages onto the internet, right? And frankly, instead of seeing that as a challenge, I would say that that is an opportunity waiting in disguise. And anybody who wants to pick up that pie is ready to be picked up. We are in the times where scalability is available like never before. So don't think for a second, like if you do not have anything right now, and there are already formidable players like Google's and Microsoft's sitting, and they will anyways take away any idea that you might have. They must have already tried out, and it would have failed, and there is nothing left. Please don't go by that. there is always this, there is this wonderful statistic that I remember we used to see that used to talk about time it took for a particular application to reach 1 million user base, right? And then there have been everybody must have already seen it. The recent version of that is the time it took for Netflix to reach 1 million users is 3.5 years. The time it took for Facebook 1 million is 10 months, Spotify 5 months, Instagram 2.5 months. And the recent phenomena, ChatGPT only took 5 days to reach 1 million user base. And that is something, that is the power of scalability that today's internet infrastructure accords. So if you have any idea in this space, and if you keep your eyes and ears open, internationalized domain names, I won't say it's the only biggest thing that is, obviously there are so many things happening in India, and that's the beauty of it. Rather, had it been the only thing that we are talking about in India to be the next buzzing thing, then I would have said that, okay, it might not be that big potential. But in India, India frankly is at an inflectional point in terms of, if you even look at the geopolitics that is happening around the world, the power centers are moving, the de-dollarization is the trend. The world is no more, for example, moving in only one axis where US-led world or China-led world. There are different power centers coming in. India historically being part of the non-aligned movement, we still are, like Dr. S. Jaishankar would put it, we are not in any camp. We are sitting on our ground. And let me assure you that ground itself is so ripe a field for businesses to make to raise their businesses, raise the capital and get profitable. That itself is a huge opportunity. Typically, when you do not belong to a particular camp, then the entire world is a playground and you can get best of both the worlds. So that is something that I would like everyone from this forum to take away from over here, that if you start a business, just always keep this in mind. Internet or some of the top tech businesses that we see today, they were not directly born for the world. They were not designed for the world. They initially started with a small community of, in case of internet at least, for example, it literally started in an English-speaking community and English-speaking community only. It is since last 15, 20 years that internet is now starting to look multilingual, global, stuff like that. Yet the massive number of financial transactions that go on to the internet are still predominantly based out of English-based services. But that's how it grew. And then it is spreading wings across. So again, bringing all that conversation and making sense of it for Indian potential MSME or startup user, I would like to say that you are in one of the best times in India to be an entrepreneur. Government of India is not only behind IDNs to be a success. Government of India is also about making startups to be successful. Just look at the massive amount of disruption that UPI has done, for example. Typically, MasterCards and Visas of the world, who would generally globally dominate the financial industry, they look so tiny when it comes to success of the UPI in terms of volume of transactions. So the landscape is changing rapidly. It was considered that internet is the great leveler and ideas will win, not the sizes of the corporations would win. But with India ecosystem, the India stack gaining prominence in terms of facilitating entrepreneurship, easing the finance. Many of you must have heard about ONDC that is being discussed about. ONDC, like for example, today we have, in terms of e-commerce business, there is a monopoly of Amazons and Flipkarts, and there are not many other players who can survive this. But there is yet another disruption that is coming our way, which is open network for digital commerce. That is another avenue for small businesses, local businesses to look at. That make sure that you see into these future trends today. And once you become some vendors on these bigger platforms, one thing that would always come to question as a question in front of you, I want to maintain my identity of my brand, right? And typically hyper-local businesses who generally transact with their customers in local languages, they either don't bother about maintaining their brand identity onto the internet because they don't need to. And some do maintain it, but they do it using various social media accounts of their own, right? But one should always think about if that is the best strategy to go about. For example, when Twitter was taken over by Elon Musk, there was a discussion that Twitter would suddenly either cease to work because so many people have left Twitter and the workforce is now 1/5 of what it was. Then Twitter suddenly changed its business model to a subscription-based model wherein you want prominent subscription, you want a blue tick or something, you just pay for it and then you get it. So there is a whole thing that got changed around the platform. Obviously, platform got benefited because the founder who took over was a genius in its own right. However, just imagine if you are a company, you are building, you're putting in lots of 5-10 years of your brand building into one platform, say for example Facebook, or you're putting everything on Instagram, or you are creating a setup or setting up a store on WhatsApp. What happens tomorrow if they change the policy? What happens if they tomorrow go with a different demographic as a priority wherein you get ignored? Then what happens to your customer base that you have built? Are you going to invest another 10 years into building that brand? If you don't want to do that, it is always a better strategy to go on something that is totally under your control. And that typically means having your own website and having your own domain hosted on your own domain. So that is where I would like to everyone to think of, if you do not have already. Obviously, when we are talking about hyperlocal businesses, it always makes sense to talk to that demographics in their own languages, because nothing connects like a language. So it would always be good if you have, and typically small businesses do not have multi-state presence, right? So even if you're working out of Maharashtra, sorry, so having a Marathi domain name and website literally connects you to a population that is easily 10-12 crores. And typically that is even 0.01% of that. If that becomes your potential customer base, you already have a company that runs into crores. So frankly, those numbers and all, or like, should I only be restricted to a state or something? Those really don't matter if you actually start jotting down onto the hardcore business plans, right? So that is what I would always advise. In terms of, typically we used to say that even in the early days, if you wanted to start a big company, I'm talking about 80s or 90s, you either needed massive amount of funds, you either needed massive amount of land, either you needed good amount of influence, either on policy makers or local policy makers, something. If you have none of those things, even one of those things, then you do not have a future into the business, right? But of lately, it was being said that you really don't need any of those except a brilliant idea, a good laptop kind of machine, and an internet connection. Once, if you have that, then you really have as equal an opportunity as probably, say, a big industry, a big company would have. Even with creator economy, we have seen that one person's YouTube channel can trump an organizational YouTube channel in terms of number of subscribers and viewership. So that's the power that is already there. I would request everyone to see the potential of internationalized domain names and their potential market size. Obviously, it's being said that it's a $2 billion market opportunity. Obviously, once more and more number of eyes turn towards this number is easily going to grow into 2 to 10, 10 to 20. That's set to happen. So to sum it up, I know we are already above the time limit. To sum it up, India is currently at the cusp of, at the best time to be an entrepreneur in India. India is supporting vernacular language ecosystem like anything. Just to give you a few pointers, for example, if somebody is only looking at creating his own language-based startup, initially it used to look like if you want to get into language-based and AI and stuff like that, one of the hardest things to get was you get your hands on the data, massive amount of data that is required to train these systems. Now, it was always a monopoly of big corporations like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, which they have invested heavily into. We know because ThinkTrans has worked for some of them to create their data. And the costs that they have paid for those are humongous. But with Government of India's Bhashini program, that same set of data in the same volume that would actually matter for any small startup to take that data off the shelf and create their own AI engines around any kind of service that you want, that is available today. And that's a huge superpower to anybody who wants to work in the AI space today. You are at the same platform as, say, for example, Microsoft in terms of data availability. Obviously, how do you train that data? How do you build the AI-based service offering around it is all dependent on your genius. And but the level playing field has been laid out. So I would say make most of it. We are having this discussion. This itself shows the kind of keen interest that the entire ecosystem has for ID and domain names. And I think the only direction from here onwards is upwards. With that, I would stop and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Akshatji, for narrating your own journey. Of course, talking about your experiences in the past versus in the current world, and how these startups and the MSMEs can benefit from the various resources, irrespective of any financial things not required. It is not a big expenditure which they really have to, look into it. And it's also not about that being worried about the bigger corporations having access or more resources. And now various other avenues have been opened up. Like you've already talked about Bhashini, we've already talked about the ID, the NIXI giving in the IDNs on a very subsidized. If you open your domain name, you get an email ID free, and then further the subsidized policy for the MSME and the startups. Of course, various other programs being run with the government, and like I mentioned, the support center being run by FICCI local initiative chapter and the FICCI LIA for the implementation of the first phase of a multilingual internet in terms of the universal acceptance. So these I would just request the people in the audience who seem interested in the subject and would like to take it forward, please do reach out to us. These resources which are available, it doesn't cost you much. It's all available almost free, and you can take this journey. Please take the benefit of the same. The time is opportune. The government is supporting. There are various stakeholders which are working together to help you out in this process. And you've heard today all the veterans, be it from the Dr. Aditya from as a chair of our FICCI task force, or Mr. Nitin Wali from the ICANN's perspective, and Mr. Nitin Walia as a UASG co-chair, that how do they see with respect to the MSME startups taking up this universal acceptance from India. So thank you all for joining us today. Yes, we have a couple of questions which have come in from the chat. I would just take it up, couple of them, because we've already crossed the time which we have allocated for the webinar, and I'm sure their commitments are there for the others as well. But in the positive time, we will just take a few questions. I would start up with Dr. Data. There's a specific question for you. I know you are into another meeting. If you're available whenever you are, then I'll address that question specific to you. But then there are other questions like how can startups and MSME measure the effectiveness of the universal acceptance efforts and track progress towards inclusivity? So Mr. Walia or Akshat or Mr. Wali, anybody wants to take it first? If not, then I would request Nitin Walia ji first. Maybe you like to go first with your thoughts, and then I will ask Akshat to add on his thoughts to it.
Thank you, Sarika ji. So I think for the startups and MSMEs, actually, to if they really want to effectively measure the universal acceptance efforts and progress towards inclusivity, the first and foremost thing is that they have to ensure that the applications which they are building, be it mobile app or be it website or any software application, it is not left with this bug of not accepting valid ID and domain names and email addresses. So, if your application is UA ready, then automatically you can start tracking the progress, that how many number of domain names which are IDN, how many number of email addresses which are EAI are getting facilitated from their applications, from their websites, which were not being able to be addressed if they are not UA ready. That's my take on that. Thank you.
Akshat?
Yeah, so I'm reading through the question, and I am not exactly sure what the user intends when he says that towards inclusivity. So I'm taking this as a linguistic inclusivity, somebody who is monolingual and is now getting benefited. Obviously, one
I
of
think
the
lingual and the digital, that's what I comprehend from the question, but yes.
right. So obviously, one of the best measures for any service is the number of users that you are getting on board. Obviously, typically, you will never be sure whether a user has come on board because it was in the multilingual format or not. Typically, there are mechanisms to track this by doing user surveys and asking them to fill out certain forms which have specific questions towards how they got introduced and all. So that is something that would always be useful. But I would again reiterate the fact that number of users would be the sole very rigid benchmark for tracking the progress.
Okay. In continuation to that question, there's another one which is that how can startups measure the success of their multilingual internet strategy? So would you like to add any particular thoughts to this one? I think it's more or less in continuation of that, how they want to actually tailor their efforts towards the digital and the linguistic inclusivity. And then they are asking it, are there any parameters which they can look into it, how that their multilingual internet strategy is working?
Right. Again, so again, multilingual internet strategy being a very broad word, I would like to slot it down. So, for example, there could be startups who have their own core offering, which is into some certain different segment than having a multilingual as a core offering, and then they add localization layer to it, and then they start seeing some additional users, right? Obviously, typically those users who come on board and use those localized interfaces, they would be the good metric to understand how good they are, their multilingual strategy is working. And I won't say this would be working for everyone. There would be obviously, depending on to which kind of audience you are catering to, that would vary, like, and it won't really be applicable for everyone across the board. So that's a word of caution over there. However, there could be some startups and some founders who are today looking at doing starting their own on their own, and if they are looking at multilingual service as one of the potential things, then I would say that that is something that they should be looking at. The success of it would obviously be dependent on your own efforts. How do you read the market? So typically any success strategy measurement measure is applicable over there. But only one thing that I would suggest is go for multilingual application services. There is a lot to gain over there.
Okay, thank you. There's another question which talks about what are the potential risks of not implementing UA for startups in a global market. So, Mr. Nitin, would you like to add first your thoughts on it, and then I can ask the rest of the speakers to join?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think this is actually really a no-brainer. I mean, if I go back a couple of decades, right, when the internet really started, people thought, what is all this hullabaloo about the internet and what's the big deal? You know, if you can send one email to another point, and there were not too many emails being sent anyway. It was just an experiment. But look where we are now, right, after a couple of decades. I think we're at a similar inflection point here, even in the US space. And if we miss this bus this time around, I think maybe 5 to 10 years down the road, all of us will be saying, hey, we really messed it up. So I think the risk is huge, but the upside is equally interesting and quite immense. So I think you should go ahead and take the UA journey forward.
Thank you. Between Akshat and Nitin Malaji, anything you would like to add on to this?
Sure. So I actually agree with what Nitin Wali has said. You know, the important thing is if you really miss this opportunity now, you're not only limiting your growth, because you know, as we all mentioned earlier, the consumers or the customers who are already being approached by various companies right now with non-UA ready applications, there's a huge competition out there. But the rest of the population, which is untapped because of the language barrier, if your application is UA ready, then you have a potential untapped market. So if you don't make your applications UA ready now, you are giving away this opportunity on a platter to your competitor, who is going to make its application UA ready before you and grab this market opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. So competition and the loss of opportunity, that's actually two terms which actually tickle our mind a lot when you talk about anybody who's going to be an entrepreneur or is running the business. Akshat, do you want to add your points to it?
I guess both the Nitinjis have done the job wonderfully, so I would just take back.
Okay, thank you. I think the other question was very specific to Dr. Data, since I think he's into some other meeting which has just come up and he's unable to answer. So I'll just try to see what I can say. That the person who's asking is asking about the FICCI ILA playing a role to overcome linguistic barriers. So while I would say that, yeah, FICCI ILA, as it stands for FICCI Indian Language Internet Alliance, we are like a platform. You can think it like a platform across different stakeholders. So you have people who are working in the silos all across, and FICCI ILA gets them all on board at one place. When you talk about FICCI ILA, the role is much bigger. It talks about the complete multilingual internet. It's not just limited to any particular subject, but everything and anything which comes under required for the multilingual internet, including the very important discussion which we had it today on the universal acceptance. How do we do that is, of course, Dr. Data would definitely add his own points to it if he is able to, but as a chair, but definitely there are various activities which are being taken by FICCI ILA and the local initiative, which is starting from the general awareness to the one-to-one guidance to technical skill empowerment, and then of course many others, like we help you in building up your own case studies, help you how to present your case studies to the global world, connect you with the different resources. It's a common connection point with the government and I would say the industry, or if you need any help from the academia, we work very close partners with Nixie. We are running the support center. So the list goes on. So I would say that please come back to us with your specific query and we will be more than happy to help you out. There is, of course, we keep on organizing these sessions. You can visit FICCI ILA page, which mentions about FICCI ILA activities, and also a specific page on the universal acceptance, which do mention about the various activities which we do it in this area. And also we request you to join the UA community, because it's a big community which we are running. It's free of cost. You can just join, which will keep you appraised about the newest developments which is happening in the UA. Any specific surveys or anything being done by the USG group, when they approach us, we get back to the community. Anything which you would like to do it with the help of our support, we are happy to provide that. And of course our activities which is ongoing and which we keep on doing it. So there's a big thing. The person who has asked, we would just request, if you have any specific query, you can get back to us. Me and my colleagues will be more than happy to help you out. With this, we would like to wrap up today's session. I would like to thank all the speakers for today's session, starting with Dr. Ajay Data, Mr. Nitin Walia, Mr. Akshat Joshi. Thank you all for taking out the time. And of course, sharing your, I would say, your experiences, your thoughts, and your views. How do the MSME in these startups can benefit from the universal acceptance with your own, either through a personal experience or something which you feel is going to be important for them. I would also like to thank the audience who have been very, very supportive, who have participated in it, and we would look forward to your continuous support. This was a very specific subject which we have this time tailored it to the MSME and the startups. We will come back to you with another version of it, maybe for the, if need be, for the MSME and startups again. Otherwise, definitely on a larger scale when we talk about the universal acceptance as a key and an important pillar for the multilingual internet. We would like to thank our partners, METVI and the TeleUpchar. METVI is, of course, a learning ecosystem for youngsters driven by mentor-led cohort. based courses and learning-driven communities. And TeleUpchar is a group of enthusiastic people who are making a differentiator impact in the healthcare sector of India by making use of AI and emerging technologies. Thank you, partners, for being with us for the organizing of this initiative. Thank you for all your support. I would like to thank my team members who are working in this area with me, with it, Priya and Sudhir, along with the other members of the FICALA who have helped in organizing this webinar for you. We look forward to future more interactions. And with this, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you and Jai Hind. Bye-bye.